We have some studies of drug discovery research that are done not in a dish, not in a whole animal, somewhere in the middle. Such kind of research is called an ex vivo research. An ex vivo research is a research where we isolate an organ or a tissue from a living organism and we test it in a maintained environment. Take, for example, it would be very difficult to know the effect of a drug on the heart, on a living organism. But it's possible to isolate the heart from an experimental animal and then check how the heart will respond to different drugs in an ex vivo environment, in a controlled environment. As the heart is working, you can see whether a certain drug would have an effect on the heart rate, on the heart rhythm, and also on conductivity. This is very interesting type of research. The same is true if you are interested to do a research on the effect of drugs on whether they increase contractility of the GIT smooth muscles, the uterine smooth muscles. The ex vivo type of research is very important. Now, let's put the triangle now. Earlier we talked in vitro. You can't do it in a dish. You can do the research using by ensuring interaction between your chemical and maybe microbes, cell lines, or even enzymes. That gives you a part of the image of the study. And again, you might take it to whole animal, or you can bring it to an ex vivo research. So in the research or in drug discovery journey, we have what we call a triangulation. We are triangulating the evidence to prove that this potential chemical could later be a medicine to treat an illness. What an interesting take. If you are so much interested on this aspect, and if you might be doing your postgraduate study or research or master's or PhD in any of drug discovery areas, feel free to reach out, to check the link in my bio. We can have a one-to-one talk and I'd be glad to provide you guidance. Nowadays, the drug discovery process or study, the drug discovery journey has shifted to computers. That is what we call the in silico method. The word in silico comes from silicon. I think that is a basic material that is used to make the computer chips, silicon. Maybe Silicon Valley. But whatever, the in silico method is a method where drugs are discovered using computers. It's also called computer-aided drug discovery. If you have noted my earlier video when I talk on in vivo, working on animals, you see, nowadays doing a research on animal is not easy because of the ethical challenge. You know, you are working on animals, there will be too much suffering of animals, the cost, okay, the time investment. Even if you do the research in vitro, the same. So doing research on computer has really revolutionized and has a bigger advantage in shortening the time that is required for purpose of drug discovery. And the basic principles that is followed in computer drug discovery is the big dogma in pharmacology. And we believe that for drugs to produce a biological effect, they need to bind. You see the same thing like the key and the lock. You have your key and it enters into the lock and it opens it up. The same story applies. So we say that drugs bind to a certain biological target. That target could be a receptor, that target could be an enzyme, that target could be a DNA, a gene, but there is some kind of binding. And this binding is characterized by an energy. The stronger the binding, the most likely the biological effect could be seen. In the same way, when someone is on your door, they put the bell. You listen to the bell and just you open the bell ringing and then you open what? The door. And your guest comes in. The same thing is true. A drug enters into your body and it clicks some biological targets and you'll see the physiological response. Seeing this response in a dish, in an ex vivo, or even on a living organism, it's quite time-taking, quite labor-intensive, and also expensive. However, the computer drug discovery approach has really helped because now you can sit on your office, you can sit on your computer and see how the potential drug chemical you have is binding with the drug target. What is the binding energy? To what extent will it bind? These are predictive models which are designed using machine learning, and there is a lot now also the involvement of also artificial intelligence in helping in this drug discovery process, and I'll talk about it in another video. Not only predicting the binding, because the binding could produce a good effect, also could produce a bad effect, that is a side effect. So we have computational tools, which is computer tools, which will also predict the possible side effect, the possible toxicity of these specific drugs. What an interesting thing. Whether the drug chemical, remember drugs are, I've told you in the earlier video, they are chemicals. They are just substances. There will be medicines when they treat an illness, you see. So this drug will have a certain chemical structure. So by looking at this chemical structure, the computers now predict whether this chemical structure could affect your liver, your kidney, whether this chemical could also cause cancer, could have an environmental toxicity. Very interesting. Not only that, whether this chemical structure, whether this drug with such a chemical structure will enter to your blood, will it enter also to your brain? Very, very interesting. Such kind of drug research process, which will really help the drug discovery process, is called in silico. Drug discovery using a computer. Now let's connect the 4 dots. You know your chemical structure of a potential drug. Maybe you have a research question. What if the same paracetamol you know, the same aspirin you know, the same metformin you know, you could ask, what if this drug could be used in treating, mention a certain disease? Now the research process will be, this metformin with a known chemical structure will be subjected to different potential drug targets to see whether it will bind or not. So when you connect your in silico finding, the computer finding, with your in vitro or ex vivo or the study on a whole animal, for sure, your research question will fully be answered.